Most money stress doesn't come from big mistakes. It comes from small decisions you barely notice. Money staying on your mind. Even when you're not spending anything. When money has no clear place. It quietly takes space in your head. This video isn't about discipline or sacrifice. It's about why money feels mentally heavy. And what changes when it finally feels clear. There's something most people don't notice when they talk about spending and saving money. When you spend money, it doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. And what you actually trade is rarely the number on the receipt. It's what comes afterward: mental ease, flexibility, and the quiet sense of safety in the days that follow. Many people believe smart spending means spending less. But in reality, a lot of people spend reasonably. They don't overspend. They don't drown in debt. And yet their minds still feel heavy around money. That weight doesn't show up at the moment of purchase. It shows up later. When you start wondering how long the month still is. Whether your plans are still flexible. Whether one unexpected event could make things feel tight. The issue isn't whether a purchase was right or wrong. It's that every spending decision carries a silent trade-off. And most of us were never taught how to see it. Welcome to Financial Awakening. This is not a place for cutting joy, glorifying sacrifice, or turning money into a moral lesson. Here, we simply look at money for what it is. A tool that either creates options or quietly removes them, depending on how it's used. In this video, we won't ask whether you should buy something or not. We'll explore a different question, one that's rarely asked. When you buy this, what are you trading away that you don't notice at first? Because much of financial stress doesn't come from spending too much. It comes from spending without seeing the delayed consequences. As those consequences accumulate, your mental space slowly shrinks. You become less flexible, less willing to adjust. And over time, money doesn't just take space in your wallet, it takes space in your mind. If you've ever felt that money didn't make you poorer, but somehow made your thoughts feel heavier, this video was made for you. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing to Financial Awakening. Your support helps us continue creating calm, practical content about money without pressure or judgment. Before we continue, here's a small question to reflect on. The last time you spent money, what did you gain, and what might you have quietly traded away without noticing at the time? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. There is a quiet paradox in how we experience money. The decisions that create the most stress are rarely the big ones. Most financial tension builds from small, repeated choices that feel almost invisible when they happen. Eating out because it's convenient. Buying something because it doesn't cost that much. Making a decision quickly, without any obvious sense of risk. In that moment, nothing feels wrong. Your account still has money. Life continues as usual. It doesn't feel like you crossed any line. What happens quietly, though, is a subtle shift in your sense of safety. Not an immediate loss of money, but a gradual loss of breathing room for later. A shrinking sense that if something unexpected comes up, you'll still have enough flexibility to adapt. As these small shifts accumulate, a familiar state appears. You're not truly short on money, yet money keeps showing up in your thoughts. Not loudly, not dramatically, just as a steady, background pressure. In that state, your mental space begins to narrow. You think more before decisions that used to feel simple. You hesitate, not because you're careful, but because you're quietly worried that the next choice might make things feel tighter. What matters here is not the act of spending itself, but the delayed consequences each small decision carries. These consequences don't appear on a bank statement. They appear in your mental state. The human brain is highly sensitive to uncertainty. When everyday choices slowly reduce your margin of safety, the mind responds by keeping money at the center of attention. Not because you're greedy. Not because you're bad with money. But because your mind is trying to protect you from future risk. Many people mistake this feeling for a lack of discipline. In reality, it's often a signal that the current spending pattern creates too many small, unseen trade-offs. From this perspective, smart spending isn't about removing joy. It's about recognizing which expenses quietly cost you more than money, by taking away calm in the days that follow. When you start to see these trade-offs clearly, something changes. You don't need to force yourself to save. Clarity itself creates lightness. A feeling very different from simply trying harder with money. There's a common misunderstanding around smart spending. Many people assume that spending wisely simply means spending less. But if you look closely, you'll notice that many people who spend very little still feel mentally tight around money. They hesitate over small choices. They overthink simple decisions. And even though their expenses are modest, the tension remains. This shows that the issue isn't the amount of money spent. It's the lingering feeling that follows the spending. A purchase can be small in numbers, yet expensive in mental cost. If it causes you to worry, calculate, or feel constrained for days afterward, then the real price isn't financial anymore. From this perspective, smart spending isn't about cutting everything out. It's about recognizing which expenses don't create ongoing pressure in your mind. Some purchases bring a brief sense of pleasure but leave behind a long shadow of mental weight. Others may feel less exciting, yet they allow your days to feel lighter and more flexible. The difference isn't in the item itself. It's in how that decision shapes your mental space afterward. If, after spending, you still feel that you have options and room to adapt, that expense is mentally light. If a small purchase makes you count down the remaining days of the month, it becomes mentally heavy, regardless of its price. Many people blame themselves for being bad with money. In reality, they're not lacking intelligence or discipline. They simply haven't been taught to evaluate spending based on long-term mental impact rather than short-term emotion. When you begin to see spending this way, something subtle changes. You don't need to force yourself to save more. You don't need to reward or punish yourself for buying something. You naturally start choosing expenses that preserve calm in the days that follow. And when that calm is protected, spending becomes wiser, not because of strict control, but because of clarity. In the end, smart spending isn't a financial tactic. It's a way of protecting your mental space. For many people, saving money immediately feels like saying no. No to enjoyment. No to things they like. No to small comforts that make life feel easier. This perception makes saving feel heavy from the very beginning. Not because less money is spent, but because it feels like something is being taken away. And when saving is linked to a sense of loss, it rarely lasts. But if you look more closely, saving money doesn't always mean refusing yourself. Often, it's simply about changing the form of enjoyment. Some choices bring quick satisfaction but quietly take away peace in the days that follow. Other choices may feel less exciting at first, yet allow your mind to remain calm and steady over time. The difference isn't whether you spend money or not. It's whether your mind still feels free after the spending. When an expense makes you cautious and tense for the rest of the month, the pleasure it provides tends to fade quickly. On the other hand, choices that preserve a sense of safety often create a quieter, longer-lasting comfort. From this perspective, saving isn't about forcing yourself into hardship. It's about prioritizing choices that don't create ongoing mental pressure. Many people believe saving requires strong discipline. In reality, what makes saving sustainable is a sense of ease. When you're no longer caught in constant internal conflict between want and should, decisions naturally become lighter. When saving doesn't feel like sacrifice, there's no need to reward yourself afterward. There's also no need to punish yourself for occasional spending. You simply learn to choose forms of enjoyment that leave less mental residue behind. Over time, this creates a subtle shift. Money no longer feels like something you have to fight against. It becomes a tool that helps maintain balance in your life. In the end, saving money isn't about living with less. It's about living in a way that allows your mind to feel lighter each day. After reflecting on how money influences emotions, habits, and the smallest daily decisions, one realization often becomes clearer. Money isn't just a number in an account. It quietly shapes the mental state you carry throughout the month. When money has no boundaries, the mind rarely rests. Not because spending is excessive, but because there's constant uncertainty about whether each decision is the wrong one. That exhaustion doesn't come from a single large choice, but from countless small decisions that lack structure. When money begins to have structure, the first change usually isn't the balance. It's the internal experience. You start knowing where you stand. You know how much room you have to choose. And you know when to stop, without inner conflict. At that point, money no longer occupies constant attention. It returns to its proper role. A tool that supports life, rather than a continuous source of pressure. This shift often happens quietly. There's no dramatic moment of realization. Just one day, you notice you're thinking about money less. Feeling calmer when making decisions. Breathing more easily in moments that once felt heavy. Here, personal finance stops feeling like a project to manage. It becomes a foundation. Something steady that prevents life from tipping too far in any direction. You may still spend. You may still say no to certain choices. But those decisions no longer drain mental energy. When money is placed into a clear structure, there's less need for self-control. There's also no pressure to constantly improve or fix yourself. The system quietly carries the weight for you. And as money takes up less mental space, something else appears. Room for focus. For creativity. For things that feel more meaningful. Perhaps this is the real value of healthy money management. Not having more, but having a lighter mind. In the end, money works best when it stays in its proper place. Not at the center of every thought, but as a quiet foundation supporting daily life. When money has clear structure, there's less need to constantly question every decision. Small choices feel lighter. Stress fades, not because there's more money, but because there's clarity about how money is being used. At its core, personal finance isn't about controlling spending. It's about creating mental space to think clearly, stay calm, and move through life with more intention. When money stops occupying so much room in your mind, life often feels lighter in subtle but meaningful ways. If this perspective resonated with you, consider subscribing to Financial Awakening. We focus on calm, practical, long-term ways to build a healthier relationship with money.